Morning. It's usual in Buddhist practice to start with refuge and bodhicitta, or developing the bodhisattva vow. These two functions can also be directly incorporated into the simplicity of the 3R practice. Because taking refuge is a sign of wanting to have some degree of safety or security, both from difficulties that occur in the world and from the turbulence of oneself. So it's seeking a protection from one's own tendencies and for the stimuli for these tendencies that might occur externally. And that by taking the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha as one's refuge, you come into a place of having proper allies that you can call on under all circumstances. Very often we call on allies that are not particularly useful. We can call on allies of psychological drivers in our heads, such as must try harder, forcing ourselves, pushing ourselves forward. Or we can have allies of laziness and avoidance, or allies of indulgence in time-wasting sort of comforting pleasures and so on. We're all familiar with the ways in which we try to support ourselves, but ways which don't really work. But the heart of the refuge is actually to have refuge. If a woman is being beaten up in Macclesfield, the fact that she might know the address of a woman's refuge won't help her if somebody's hitting her. You have to actually be in the woman's refuge to get refuge. If you're in the place of danger, knowing about a refuge doesn't really do much. So refuge, to be meaningful, has to be something which is actually there in the palm of your hand, giving you refuge, rather than just the idea of something. Otherwise, you're kind of looking in a sort of holiday catalogue and thinking, oh, Bahamas look very nice. Maybe I could go to Bali. And then you end up in Blackpool. You know, it's what you actually get is what you get. So the important thing is not to spend one's time being caught up with ideas and representations of something which act as a strange substitute. It doesn't really displace you from where you are, but it's a sort of comforting balance or sort of comforting support, but it's not really doing the business. So the real refuge is to be able to place oneself differently, to experience one's existence differently, and then one is actually practically protected. So the path to that really is meditation. Aspirations are important, but the method for realizing that aspiration is to engage with one's own situation. So that when we do the 3R practice, we have the potential to relax into the unborn nature, which is the ultimate refuge, which is the only real refuge. And also to see how we lose that, to get more and more knowledge of the barriers between ourselves and a state of peace and ease, to get more understanding of how we sabotage ourselves and make wrong choices. That's already the beginning of a refuge, because you now have a clearer sense of what you might need to protect yourself against. And the best way to do that, of course, is to relax, not to try harder. The more you engage with difficulties and obstacles and try to sort them out, the more you will become entangled with them. The key thing of refuge is really believing the view that what we looked at yesterday afternoon about the nature of our mind. Really taking refuge inside that view and using that as a way of experiencing one's existence. And through that, you get the real refuge. Then inside that state, because it is infinite, because it has no limit, compassion is automatically there. Because as soon as the barrier of self and other, of dualistic perception, is dissolved, why would you not be immediately, automatically concerned with others? Because others are as much you as you are yourself. When you experience that your experience is yours, when you really see that, then when you sit in this room and you see other people, these people are your experience. And you yourself are your experience. What is it that privileges the experience of you as you from the other people as you? Both are equally experienced. So, awakening to the nature of the mind in the state of non-duality brings with it an ease of being with others. And so refuge and bodhicitta are automatically engaged within this practice. One can have all sorts of elaborated system, but at the heart of it is to trust yourself. Generally speaking, in Buddhism there's an idea that people don't trust themselves or falsely trust themselves too much and are dogmatic and opinionated. Therefore, learning to trust the Buddha is a way of shifting to a clearer, simpler kind of trust, and then gradually that mode of trust can be integrated and applied to oneself. In Dzogchen we would do that immediately. Why would you not trust yourself? This is the invitation to examine all the bases through which you might feel that you are untrustworthy, and see whether these bases for not trusting yourself are themselves trustworthy. Many people's lives are completely diminished because of internalized messages from their childhood that they are stupid, that they are unlovable, that they were unwanted, and they carry these messages through their lives. They take refuge in a negative belief which has never really been true about how they actually are, but has become for them the fundamental basis of their self-definition. When we see that that is the case, and we help the person to awaken to the idea that they have been contaminated or poisoned by something which is not self, but which appears to be self, then in the work of therapy, you can start to increase the capacity to discriminate what is a false introject, what has been taken in, and which now appears to be self, but is actually other. It's a perverse notion taken from the environment. This can be applied to all of the meditation problems that we have, all the misconstruals that we have about who we are, all the false ideas about who we are, seem to be us and seem to give us a sense of identity, but this is a false refuge, because these ideas, as we looked yesterday, have to be returned to again and again. If we don't maintain the false refuge, the refuge will not be there. But the real refuge of the innate Buddha nature is always there, whether you do anything or not. That's why it's the real refuge. That's why it's called Vajra, or indestructible. But the refuges that we build in our lives, whether they're negative beliefs about ourselves, or positive beliefs, it doesn't matter. These will all be arising due to causes and conditions. If you have a job, your job works on the basis that economic systems support that. If you work for other people, if you work in an institution, your work is often at the mercy of changes in government policy, changes in government funding. So there is very little security in that kind of identity. You can be made redundant. If you identify with a particular kind of hobby, playing tennis, playing golf, having a garden, that also can change. If you identify with the house where you live, that also can change. There is nothing in this world which is stable and reliable. This is what we were looking at yesterday in terms of refuge. So, false refuge is dangerous because it creates the notion that something which is essentially or inherently unreliable and impermanent can be made permanent if you just say it enough. This is a magical belief, and magic doesn't work. Magic just doesn't work. Nothing remains. Everything will go into emptiness. This is why when we make this sound ah, ah is the symbol of emptiness itself. And in some of the teaching it says that the center of the universe is just one letter ah. Everything is just ah. Ah is the primordial sound out of which everything else can arise. Ah, mama, papa. Gradually words are built up. And this basic sound tilts into silence. Silence to ah, to all the various linguistic configurations. So when we say this ah, we take all the constructs which we hold in place through our use of language, through our reliance on concepts, and dissolve them back into their basis, into just the basic sound of ah, and that sound of ah goes into emptiness. And in that way, all the constraints, all the false refuges, all the thoughts, plans that we've built our lives on, we can just do a great spring cleaning, just empty it out. And then you have a fresh space. And from that fresh space, many new things will arise. And now you can see that they are indeed arising. They are not there from before. And this again is one of the reasons why we do this meditation practice with our eyes open. Because sometimes if people are doing visualizations, they kind of close their eyes and they go into an interior imaginal space. And in that imaginal space, they may have particular visions or very meaningful experiences, and then they come out of that back into this world. The danger of that is, it is as if the world continues. It's like you fall asleep at night in your bed and you wake up the next morning in the same bed. So it's as if, here I am back in the same place. No matter where I've gone in my dream, the bedroom is the same. Therefore, the bedroom is real, the house is real, my diary is important, I've got to get to work. And so you're back into the treadmill of living life on the familiar terms. I exist in the world as separate from the world but connected with the world, and I have many things to do. When we do the meditation with open eyes, we're not going anywhere else. We're relaxing into the movement of the forming and unforming of our experience, so that sometimes as we're sitting, we have a clear sense of what's around us, and other times it becomes vague and changeable. Sometimes one thing insists and then it doesn't. There are two choices at that point. We could say, oh, my mind gets a bit fuzzy and so I don't quite see things as they are, which would be our normal returning to substantial reality. Or we can just stay with that experience and see, oh, this is the actuality which is covered up by the tidying notions of things are truly existing in themselves. And if it was a table on Monday, it'll be a table on Friday because of the internal tableness of the table. But when you actually start to directly experience phenomena, you find that what you have is a flow of experience. There's a word in Tibetan, rang nang. Rang means self, here means sort of automatic, and nangwat means an appearance, something that you see, can also mean to see. But in particular in Dzogchen it means experience. So Rangnam is the experience of what presents itself through and as the senses. And this is always changing. So one starts to become aware of a world of pulsation. This is the flow of experience which is direct and amenable. You can work with it, but it is not abstract. It's not contained in fixed places. The words fix, and in that way give some security, but in their fixing they disguise the labile, the dynamic changing nature of lived experience. So part of ignorance, or part of the way that samsara differs from nirvana, is that in samsara we're using representation and concept to try to organize what appears to be the chaos of raw experience. Whereas in the Dzogchen practice, one remains open to this complex unfolding of experience, which is always just on the cusp, always just on the edge of moving into the unspeakable. So it's both ordered and disordered at the same time. Everything which is ordered vanishes. This is the self-liberation of phenomena. And then something, and then something, and then something. And so everything becomes very dynamic. And through that you yourself become dynamic. Then we experience subject and object as movements in an interplay which is always evolving, but moving inside this unborn mirror of awareness. So the reflections move and are still at the same time, and the mirror never moves. So this is the real refuge. When we say that the mind is like a mirror, it means it has no internal substance and it has no limit. It's just showing everything. It doesn't mean it's a flat plane surface like a mirror. It's more like a hologram space. It's just this empty possibility of revealing. And inside that, everything is immediately just here. This is the immediacy of clarity. And within that, subject and object are moving all the time. This is the real refuge, to relax into the integration of the openness, the clarity, and the spontaneous movement, without seeking to organize it through taking refuge in concepts. Concepts are part of the flow. They are not the masters of the flow. Concepts are just things arising and passing inside the flow. So, if we do this 3-hour practice now, we just relax and sit, and we sit for a bit longer time this morning, and just see, allow whatever is coming to come, allow it to go. If your mind seems dull, if you seem to be getting caught up in something, don't worry. Relax into the out-breath and just stay with whatever is there. Not falling into it, not trying to push it away, but just very easily being with what is there. Ah. So in that practice, you may have the experience that particular qualities or sensations appear to be the point from which you are having your experience. Again and again, return to being present with that. Presence here means something different from mindfulness. Mindfulness, as we looked briefly yesterday, is a kind of keeping an eye on something. It's about attention. A attends to B. Subject attends to object, which implies a separation and a positioning, an attitude towards something, an intention towards something. Presence is just the being, the there-ness of something. So we are all, if you like, on one level, present in this room. We may be present in the room in the way that sheep are present in a field. But we are here. We're not somewhere else. So that's the most basic kind of present. The fact that we are present in the room may be out of our mind. We may be absent from the fact of our presence. We may have gone somewhere else while remaining where we are. This again is exactly the relation between samsara and nirvana. Samsara is where you are absent from where you are present. Now how can that be? How can you be present and absent at the same time? Well, when you sit here and you go off on a daydream, you are present, you haven't actually gone anywhere else, and yet it is as if you have gone somewhere else. This is what samsara is. Samsara is to waken up on the point where you already are. It's not about going somewhere else. It's about no longer being absent to the presence that's there. In the same way that a mirror is always present with the reflections that are inside it. The mirror, because you can't see the mirror itself, you only see the reflection, can often seem absent in its presence. But the presence of the reflection shows the presence of the mirror. If you think that the mirror is a substantial thing, then the presence of something else will have somehow covered it up. So if I have a bowl here, and we can see that this bowl has an emptiness to it, it has a space inside it. If I then cover it with something, the potentiality of the bowl to hold things is obscured by the covering. The potentiality is no longer available. So the obscuration has somehow removed the potential. The potential is still there, but it seems to be removed from view. That's how we experience samsara. We experience a direct absence for ourselves. It is as if we have lost something. If somebody says to us, "You have Buddha nature," we think, "Oh yeah, come on, what is this, second-hand car salesman? I don't have Buddha nature, I'm a person with lots of problems." It doesn't feel as if I have that, because we imagine that it is going to be like something that we already know. So we might think that enlightenment is just a better form of happiness. We know what it's like to be happy, we know what it's like to be sad. We then think, oh, if I get enlightened, I can be happy all the time. So it will be more of the same. But actually, enlightenment is that which is always present. So the mirror is present through its absence as something as such. The presence of the reflection, which seems to hide the emptiness of the mirror, is actually the revelation of the emptiness of the mirror. So your mind is not something that you will ever find. You can find your thoughts, you can find your feelings. You can get to know what a thought is, what a feeling is. You know what sensations in your body are like. You can increase the sensations of your body in a pleasurable way, and you can increase them in an unpleasurable way. You can develop happy thoughts, you can develop sad thoughts. These are all operating within the domain of activity, of things that you can do. But the mind itself is not a thing. This is unimaginable because our imagination, our cognitive capacity is always directed towards things. If something is not a thing, you can't think about it, because thinking is always about things, even things which don't exist. You can think about emptiness, you can think about nothingness. There are thousands of books about nothingness. So you can fill the gap by having some concepts. But the mind itself, in not being a thing, is exactly the possibility of all things being present. So when you meditate, the fact that you have all sorts of weird thoughts and feelings and memories and hopes passing in your mind, that is exactly the revelation of the emptiness of the mind. Because if the mind wasn't present, there would be no illumination of what is occurring. Just as it is the capacity or the potential of the mirror to show things which is revealed through the presence of reflections. You never find the mirror without reflections. In the same way, your mind is always full of stuff. Now, if you think, I have to remove the stuff from my mind in order to find my mind, you will have some problem. And you can spend a lot of time doing very bad meditation. Because the stuff you want to take out of your mind is your mind. The mind is integrated. It is not built up by bits of Lego. The openness, the emptiness, which is the mirror itself, the clarity, which is the potential of the mirror to show everything, and the precise movement, which is the gestural economy within the revelation, within the reflections, these three have never been separated. But our gaze is tilted towards activity. So I can say, I am lifting the mug. And it appears that there is a separate me who is the agent, the one who is doing, the chepapo, the one who makes things happen with regard to the mug. So my activity confirms on top of myself my own validity, like giving yourself a self-initiation. The self-initiation of the ego is every time you've done something, which is why children are always running in with their little drawing and say, look what I did, look what I did. So, oh, that's wonderful. What we're saying is, you really exist. Yes, I really exist. Do you exist, Mummy? Yes, I exist too. We all exist. Oh. In this way, love makes people stupid. Because, of course, we don't really exist. What has happened is that the energy of the Dharmakaya has flowed through the child and made this drawing. And now the child is doing something else, and now the child is doing something else. And what is the child? Nothing but a process. If you have children, they always change. Day by day, hour by hour, they're doing something different. And suddenly they're 5, and then they'll be 10, and then they're leaving home. And so they were never graspable. There is never anything graspable. You look back at photographs and you think, oh, but they're gone. Life is process, it's a flow, it's a movement, it's the movement of the open dimension, of the mind itself, ceaselessly flowing. So when you sit in meditation, if you have dull thoughts, don't worry. If you have strange thoughts, don't worry. If you have habitual boring thoughts, don't worry. Just stay present with these thoughts. The quality of presence is like the mirror-like awareness. If you do that, these arisings will all pass. If you don't stay present with it, it is very habitual for us to think, oh God, what's the matter with me? Why can't I meditate? Why am I always stuck in this? And you will take that evanescent, that flowing, ephemeral, ungraspable movement and turn it into proof of your own stupidity. and you'll compound yourself, beating yourself, like making bricks in a hot country, taking the earth and packing it in, and then you have something substantial. But of course it's never substantial. What it is your own attachment, your own investment in the belief is disguising the nature of that belief from you. What's happening is a thought is using another thought to create the thought about oneself, which is a thought. Thoughts are chasing each other round and round and round and round. So, what is samsara? What is the ego? What is the state of confusion? Nothing but thought. It's just a moment of confusion. And that moment of confusion sets up a chain. It's often compared to watching sheep on a hillside when they walk in a row, one after the other, after the other, after the other. You get a lugugyut, you get a lineage or a chain of sheep moving, of thoughts moving. And that's what the world is constructed of. Little chains wrapping themselves, then another little chain, then another little chain. And each of these chains arises and then passes and vanishes, then another, then another, then another. Clearly, this is dynamic because it's moving. But the dynamic presents itself as being static. This is what ignorance is, to take the dynamic as static, to take the scarecrow to be a person. The scarecrow is just a bit of wood and some old clothes blowing in the wind. If you mistake it, if you take it the wrong way, it will appear to you to be a real person. If you mistake what is arising in the experience of meditation, you will simply be hanging out with the habitual patterns of thought formation, which will convince you that you're a stupid person who can't meditate. I've got so much work to do. I have to clear all this stuff out of my mind. Only when my mind is clear will I be able to meditate. Your mind is already clear. It's because it's clear that it's able to show all this crap. The clarity of the mind is the stuff which arises in it. But it's not what I ordered. That's exactly the point where you start to get into the confusion. So, by presence we mean being present with whatever occurs. Not trying to pull in the things we like, not trying to push away the things we don't like. In Tibetan there are a lot of terms which deal with this, like not having any direction or bias, chokrime, not being tilted in a particular direction. Because sometimes in meditation we're tilted towards the object, sometimes we're tilted towards the subject. We're all about what's going on, or we're all about ourselves in relation to what's going on. Not taking up any bias, just resting equally. No kind of prejudice. Also, the nature of the mind that we're talking about is often described as being like a tigli. Tigli means a drop or a ball, a small sphere, and it's round because it has no corners. It's zurme. If you have a corner, you will catch things on it. You know, often people bang their knees on the edge of the bed. You get up and you forget there's a sharp bit of, because the duvet covers it. Corners are very dangerous in that way. They cut things, they slice into things. When we have corners in our mind, we get snagged. When the mind is smooth like a ball, there's nothing to catch onto. It just rolls along. So this is the function of the tigli, which is to see the infinity of everything. Each thing that arises is, if you like, one small tigli, one small ball of rainbow light that's moving, contained within many, many others. So in these tankas, like here this one of Dorje Semba, you can see that, or in any of them really, you can see that they have around them a halo of rainbow light. This is actually a three-dimensional ball. They're encapsulated in a ball of rainbow-colored light. And each thing that we see is in this ball of light. This is both a symbol and a kind of experience you can get in meditation of seeing directly the luminosity of existence. But here we see it primarily as a symbol. It represents letting the flow of experience continue. Don't try to improve it. As soon as you think there are errors, you have entered into judgment. So you are telling the ground nature what is right and what is wrong. Now, from the Buddhist point of view, although it's a very different way, we could say there's a kind of analogy with the mind itself, with Rigpa, and a Semitic religion notion of God. God is the creator of all things. In Buddhism we say the mind is the creator of all things. In the Semitic religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, it's considered a very big sin to say, I am God. In many times people would be killed, they would be burnt alive or chopped into pieces if they said, I am God. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it's not a big problem to say, I am God. What it means is, the mind itself is the source of all things. We are at the center of the universe. This is not a narcissistic ego inflation. It's to say we can directly perceive existence manifesting from the center of our being. In the center of our heart, everything is radiating as this infinite universe. And each person is the center of the universe, with this interplay of origination occurring. The ground of this, as we looked yesterday, is called the Buddha Samantabhadra, meaning always good, kuntu zangpo, always already good, perfect from the very beginning. If the ground is perfect, the fruit will be perfect. If it's good in the beginning, it will be good in the end. So, discrimination arises. We say, this is good, this is not good. What do we say this is not good about? Something which has the same origin as something which we say is good. What is the basis of our discrimination? What I like and what I don't like. The basis of our discrimination is our own limitation, which we develop because we don't recognize our own infinity. So, having forgotten that we are co-extensive with everything, with the universe, we become a very small person who then has to chop the world up into what I like and what I don't like. But of course, we don't get what we like, and we do get what we don't like. So this discrimination, rather than giving us power and control over our lives, actually has us as puppets of pain, running in misery from situations which are always outside our control. So, being present in this open state means to really see, because the mind is infinite, it has no limit. Where do things come from? Somewhere else? Where would the limit be to infinity that allowed somewhere else to occur? If things are not made in Britain, well, maybe they're made in France, maybe they're made in Germany, maybe they're made in Japan. But if we say the world, well, if they're not made in the world, where would they be? Well, it might be an asteroid coming through space. If we say the universe, well, what would be outside the universe? Maybe another universe. If we said the whole of everything, clearly nothing could come from outside. If you really, really understand this, if you see this directly in your meditation, you will see everything arises from the same ground. Because it arises from that ground, it is innately pure, inherently pure. This is called kada. Ka means from the beginning. Ka also means like a pillar, like a pillar that holds up a temple. It means something which joins heaven and earth, something which is solid and reliable. Kada means pure, always pure, pure without limitation. In that case, everything which arises has that nature. Remember, when you look in a mirror, if the image reflected in the mirror is horrible, how horrible is it? It looks horrible, but is it innately horrible? No, it's just a reflection. If you look in the mirror and you see something beautiful, how beautiful is it? It's just a reflection. It's not innately beautiful. It's only a reflection. This whole world is like a dream, like the reflection of the moon on water. Therefore, when we say good, bad, I like, I don't like, we are doing a violence to the world on the basis of our own anxiety. And this only creates suffering for us. Everything is good. Now, clearly some things don't appear to be good. Okay, so let's think of something which would not be good. Killing, stabbing someone, shooting people to death, wrapping bombs around your body and blowing yourself up to kill people. That's, we might agree, is a very bad thing. Who is killed? People are killed. What are people? Very precious things, because human beings are the site of the Buddha nature, and human beings have the capacity to realize their own Buddha nature. So it's very important that human beings have safety and security to meditate and so on. This is true. But why should they meditate? In order to realize their Buddha nature. What is the realization of this Buddha nature? From the very beginning, nothing has existed. So, who is being blown to pieces? Nothing. Now, this could sound like a mad sort of nihilism, but we don't need to care about anyone because it's all just empty. It's not like that at all. We're talking here about a meditational view to help us to loosen up these knots of conceptualization and the investment of phenomena with reality. Compassion can still flow out, but compassion that flows in the manner of a dream to help dreamlike beings. This is the central notion of compassion in Mahayana Buddhism. Not to take things too seriously. Because the real function of compassion is to help people awaken. If people are fed and made safe, that's very nice. But it doesn't really solve the problem, because the structure of their own karma will return them to suffering again and again. The charities, the wonderful charities that we have, Amnesty International and so on, do very good work, are very important and vital, and yet, of course, it never ends. And why does it never end? Well, if only good people could gather together, then things would be wonderful. Remember, there was that song in the 60s, "Last night I had the strangest dream." You know, people had met together, put an end to war. But it doesn't happen, and it's not going to happen, because this is samsara. Samsara is created out of the 5 poisons: stupidity, attachment, desire, aversion, jealousy, and pride. We see that in our political leaders, we see that in soldiers, we see it in terrorists, we see it in ourselves. We all have the basis for creating turbulence. So the central point is, what is the nature of a human being? Emptiness. Everything is inside the mirror. Yeah, but killing children, what about children? Well, I work in adult mental health, and I get personally a bit annoyed that all the money goes to child mental health. You just show a photo in the newspaper of a crying child and all the money goes there. Nobody wants to give money for crying old people. Old people's services have just been decimated in my mental health trust, and they didn't touch the children at all. Because the children and the Sun newspaper married forever. Old people, who cares? You know? This is to show the intensity of attachment that we have to the idealization of children. Old people hardly matters. Look how much protection there is for children in this country. How much protection is there for old people in old folks' homes? Scandal day after day after day. This is prejudice. This is overinvestment in a potential that hasn't yet been realized, and the absolute lack of respect and gratitude for those who have spent their lives working for others. When we see this, we become a bit suspicious, perhaps, of our mental categories. We start to deconstruct the assumptions that we have that everything is very rational and reasonable. We realize, indeed, everything is just created by the mind. We attribute this value, then we attribute that value. Everything has value. The victim has value, the perpetrator has value. Both arise from the same nature. This is very difficult for us to understand. We want to say in our culture nowadays, the victim is holy and the perpetrator is hellish. The perpetrator is a devil. But the perpetrator has Buddha nature. The victim also has Buddha nature. Due to causes and circumstances, this potential in its obscuration manifests in this life as victim, in another life as perpetrator. The victim in this life has been a perpetrator in a previous life. But we want to put a little box around people and say, good, and then another box, bad. And how bad? Very bad. And how long are they going to be bad for? Forever. The Sun says pedophiles burn in hell forever. It's not like that. It changes. There is no essence to a pedophile. There is no essence to a murderer or a torturer. Each of these hellish deeds that is done is a gesture in time arising due to causes and circumstances. And when it's gone, it's gone. Which is not to say you should let people get away with it, but it is to stay with how things are, which is complicated. The ego is always trying to work out what's the right way to do things. How shall I live? What shall I do? It's too complicated. Through meditation, we open and we see the complexity. We can then work with very difficult people, but with space. Space is the basis for the integration of all things. If you try to integrate through conceptualization, you'll always be running away, because one thought will lead to another, to another. Yes, well, we do need to take care of the people who commit these crimes and re-educate them. But they're so resistant and it costs so much money, and why should we subsidize Grendon Prison? I think we should close it down. Yeah, but if we do that, then the people will come back into the community. Well, we should kill them. Yes, but we're a liberal bourgeois society. We don't kill people. And people's minds are going like this and this and this. And you see that in social work departments. Let's be generic. Let's be specialist. Let's take care of this group. Let's take care of that group. And it's just pulsations, because you can't solve all the problems. You get too into the detail. So from the point of view of meditation, the mind is open and empty. Thoughts and feelings arise. Allow them to arise and see what they are. And then you understand directly what is your experience. What is this person in front of you who you're talking with? When somebody tells you the tragic story of their life, how should you listen to them? Listen from a state of openness and awareness. Allow their words to arise, to caress your heart so that you can feel, you can cry with them, you can be upset with them. But as their words caress your heart, they can turn into rainbows. If you take their pain into you and hold on to it, all that will happen is you will tighten up. What will you do? Your anxiety won't halve their anxiety. A problem shared is a problem halved? Maybe not. Maybe not. In the immediacy of it, in the instant gratification of releasing something you've held inside you, of course there's some relief. But what is set up is an anxiety about the nature of reality. And the only way to deal with that anxiety is not sorting out the object, because we'll never have enough United Nations troops to go around and solve all the problems. The only way is to be in the heart of the issue as it arises and allow it to self-liberate. Good things arise and pass. Bad things arise and pass. When bad things arise for a while, then they suddenly stop. Good things arise for a while, then they suddenly stop. This is our world. We have peace in Europe, probably not forever. War within 50 years? What do you think? Anyone here a gambling person? Quite possibly. Putin's Russia could be starting to screw things up, more fuel crises and so on. It's very easy for wars to start. We've had a lot of wars. Every village around here has war memorials, but we live as if war has gone forever. The basis of war is inside ourselves, inside our own prejudices and thought processes. And so that's why meditation is so important, to be able to see our own spaciousness, our infinity, and then observe how we tie ourselves in knots, how we cheat ourselves, and how we find the reassurance of being correct, of knowing what's what, of being the judge, the discriminator. We find the potency of that so attractive. And in Dzogchen, that is one of the things we have to let go of. And return to the fact that all things that arise are the unborn children of the empty ground nature, reflections in the mirror. That is radically different from a reified, substantialized, entity-focused notion of social policy. And somehow, part of the work is to take the openness of the meditation into being in the world with others in a way which is compassionate and ethical, but also light and flexible and self-liberating. Okay, shall we have a little break here? And then we'll come back and do some questions and some more practice before we come to an end. Okay, so what we've been looking at is that the transmission of flow is when, through practicing together, we become more tolerant of the great complexity of all that is occurring. And through tolerating that complexity, we allow it just to move on. It's about letting go of the need to control situations and move towards participation in situations. If you participate, you will be affected. If you are affected, you will not be in control of how you are affected. So the main difficulty or the main problem that comes in meditation is a sense of self-knowledge. This is who I am, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So we go into the world with a shopping list. That shopping list validates our existing position and closes us down to new possibilities. So when we relax and do the 3R, we let go of the shopping list and we say, I'll be interested in whatever comes. Traditional example for this is it's like a small child in a beautiful monastery full of colors and smells and statues, and the child's just, because it's the relationship of awe, of opening, that really allows ourselves to be impacted. And then through that, we do whatever we do. Rather than saying, I need to have only what I want. There is so much in this world I don't want. So living with what arrives, sometimes that will be good, sometimes it will be bad. Sometimes it will be sickness, sometimes it will be death, sometimes it will be loneliness, sometimes it will be joy, falling in love, being happy, getting fulfillment at work. Whatever comes, just stay present with it, and it will go. Everything that comes will go. Let it go. Let it come, let it go. If you try to make the world according to your design, I think all the evidence is that you're not able to do that. Within certain limits, of course, you have to do things in the proper order. If you're doing a tax return, if you do it in the wrong way, the tax department will come on you and cause you lots of hassles. So, compliance with the forms of the world, knowing that a double yellow line means a parking fine, is quite wise. So it's not, oh, anything goes. It's a sensitivity to the situation, but not a sense of mastery. Mastery is a great illusion. The notion of becoming the master. What will you be the master of? In Dzogchen, the master is someone who says hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. That's all. Hello, goodbye. Welcome, bye. Welcome, bye. They are the master of not getting caught up in stuff. They're not masters who make things happen. One of the functions of Tantra, because it's a largely magical system, is to create the notion of the master as a magus, as somebody who can transform the world and make it rain, or make it not rain, or cure sick cows, or whatever. There are mantras for everything. That's an interventionist, power-based policy, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. There's no guarantee. These big lamas also have many problems. Idealization is a kind of stupidity. One can have respect, but for example, the Karmapa is now able to start to travel and believe he's going to America this year. But he wasn't able to travel because the politicians wouldn't give him a travel permit. Tai Situpa also can't travel. Tai Situpa is pinned like a butterfly in a box. Tai Situpa is a very great meditator, a great master who has done many, many things, but due to the various politics of the Kajupa sect, he has been pinned very tightly. So, worldly power and spiritual realm are two separate domains, and it's a big fantasy to imagine that somehow masters of meditation can choose the right number for the lottery, or even choose a happy person to marry. Many great lamas in the Nyingma sect have very unhappy marriages. So it's very, very important to be careful of dreams of power. That's why I always think that the practice of Dzogchen is more useful to us, because we are already very intoxicated with dreams of power. And something more gentle, more responsive, more accepting is very important. Because we see ecologically, politically, what happens when we have dreams of dominance. That we're going to sort out the problem in Iraq. We're going to give these people democracy. And this leads into absolute chaos. So, learning how to find the middle way between the all-controlling master and the helpless victim. Very often people think that a sort of quietist way of proceeding, a more passive, adaptive way of proceeding, is somehow to be helpless. But unborn awareness is never helpless. Unborn awareness is always fresh, always open, whatever happens. That's what real freedom is. Real mastery is not getting tied in knots, which means avoiding all the temptations of worldly power, the seductions of people thinking that one is special in some way. Everything has the same nature. So if people think we're good, that's what they think. If people think we're bad, that's what they think. Are we good or bad? From the very beginning, our nature has been empty and open. It's neither good nor bad. No comment can define who you really are. In this life, some people in the room have female bodies, some have male bodies. Next life, it's going to be different. Next life, you may not have a human body. This is a temporary manifestation due to causes and circumstances. Some people are rich, some people are poor, some people are happy, some people are sad. This is due to causes and conditions. Rich people can become poor, poor people can become rich, happy people can become sad, sad people can become happy. We know this. It's just we know this. So, none of the forms that exist are reliable. So, spending a lot of energy trying to correct the forms, trying to make things work better, will give some short-term relief, because it may work a little bit as a strategy, and it may give you the confidence that you are indeed a true agent, you're somebody who is powerful and can make things happen for a while. For a while. Power is a karmic result. People are powerful because their karma gives them that power for a while, and then it's gone. If you think of the Shah and Shah of Iran, the Pahlavi dynasty, palaces, cars, helicopters, everything. And then some beardy man from Paris arrives back and they're gone. Just like that. Bop. Old Adolf Hitler, very powerful, gone. Joseph Stalin, gone. Yeah. So it's really important to see samsara is a network of concepts and ideas which is infinitely seductive for us. That we get drawn into narratives, storylines about how to live our lives, how to improve our lives, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. All of these thoughts appear to be very, very important. How will we make this Dharma center develop? What are the projects? These things are important, but they're also always empty. And if we forget the emptiness, then there can be a desperation when problems arise. If this Dharma center thrives, very nice. If this Dharma center collapses, very nice. When we were doing the translations of our texts in India, my teacher Siya Lama always wrote at the end of the foreword to the books, if there is any merit in this book, we offer it to all beings. If there is no merit in this, we put it back into emptiness. Either way, it doesn't make any difference. We just do what we do, and having done it, something else will happen. So the key thing here is about investment. Each moment we give just the due for that moment. Not trying to make a profit, not trying to have a doggy bag that will carry over into the next moment. Just this, then this, then this. Believing through experience that the ground nature will keep providing us with something. And if we can be with everything, everything will be fine. But if we can only be with our restricted diet, we will have trouble. That's at the heart of it. How to be with what is there. To know directly the ground of what is there. And of course, when you directly experience things coming from the ground as the ground, they are the same as they always were. Houses are houses, cars are cars, friends are friends, enemies are enemies. But they're subtly different because they are now empty and shimmering. They are the energy of the Dharmakaya. So life then becomes like a dream. This is what flow means. This is good. This is the continuity, the linking of all phenomena as a ceaseless stream. In the Mahamudra text they say many times that it's kewa mepa gakpame. And Nyingmapa also used this term. It means unborn and unceasing. The nature of the mind is unborn. If you look for it, you'll never find it anywhere. There's nothing to grasp. And yet, ceaselessly, thoughts, feelings, sensation, experience arises. These two factors have been non-dual from the very beginning. Therefore, allow yourself to experience the one taste, the taste of emptiness, the absolute equality, the undifferentiated equality, nyampani, of all phenomena as manifesting from this one ground. And when we do that, we don't have to be so busy. We already know everything is as it is. So what we like and what we don't like is now just another thought arising in our mind. It doesn't mean that you will become somehow bland or homogenized. You'll still have your particularity. You'll like one kind of chocolate more than another kind. But it will be lighter. There'll be less desperation. Okay, see if you have any questions or thoughts on what we've done over these 2 days. There you go. Very nice.
I've got a question about looking at the sky, blue sky. Looking at the blue. Question about looking at the blue sky and patterns that can reveal. And I'm wondering what that is.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
Well, what have we been talking about?
Well, what triggered it was, I was talking to Wendy last night about this, but you mentioned something called Tigle, which I hadn't come across before. And it just reminds me. It's like...
Okay, so this is a question related to a practice called Namka Arti, which means you sit outside on a clear day with the sun behind you, sit in a relaxed open position and open your gaze to the sky in front of you, clear blue sky, and you just relax into that state. And it's a very useful way of completely opening the mind, finding no limitation. Then inside that, what often arises are small points of white light turning and swirling. This is the energy of the world. This is arising immediately from the Dharma Dhatu. There's nothing to do with it, just to be open to the experience of these points. Because these points are the source of everything we see. Everything we see comes from sound and light as a kind of mass, and light as rays or points. And these tigli are the ways of manifestation of existence. They're the energy of the world. So there's nothing to do with them, just to be open and allow them to move. And then you start to see the ground spaciousness is vital and alive. There are no dead things. Buildings also are dynamic and changing. You know, as we've looked just this weekend, this room exists as a building made of bricks and cement as concept. We know that, but it's not what we experience. What we experience is shape and color. And if you stay with experience, your world will become dynamic. Everything will start to move. And then you will find yourself moving in that dynamic interaction. But wondering what they are and who made them and where they came from.
I didn't realize it was a practice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, in Dzogchen there are many practices involving imagining Tigle going here, there and everywhere. Any other thoughts or questions?
The question came out of you were describing the situation with the fruitarian and their actions maybe excluding them or creating a conflict, maybe quite an extreme diet. But maybe think about on being, say, a dharmic practitioner and yet wanting to not harm living beings in terms of, say, a vegetarian diet, or choosing that as an option from an ethical point of view. And yet that might cause conflict as well, as you visit your mum's the weekend and trying to keep those principles alive, yet being light with it as well. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it always depends really. In Buddhism, traditionally everything depends on the view. So in the Nyingma tradition we have these 9 different yanas or vehicles, each of which has a view, a meditation, a conduct and a result. So if you are taking on the very first level, the view would be to cause no harm, first of all, and to try to do good. So on the level of cause no harm, if you feel that the production of meat for human beings to eat causes harm to animals, then you wouldn't want to participate in that. And that would be your view. So you might decide, I will hold to this very strongly, and I'll have to say to my mum, I'm sorry, but I can't eat that. If you have a view that everything has the nature of emptiness, and because it's empty, your practice is to be non-discriminatory, which means to eat whatever you encounter, which is a particular kind of practice, then you might eat the meat, you might eat the vegetables, and if a fly has come and done a poop on your food, you eat the poop as well. Because you would be not discriminating between clean and unclean, which in the practice of Tantra, the higher levels of Tantra becomes very important. Because as long as you have a dualistic discrimination between this is holy and pure and this is dirty and impure, the mind is very busy trying to sort things out. And the ego self remains the master, the one who's in charge of working out the attribution of value. To transcend that is to go through it into the encounter with things which would normally be seen as unhelpful. There was a program on the television, this guy, can't remember his name, he's doing a pilgrimage to China. What's it, Andrew, knows it? Paul Merton. And he went to this street where they serve dog meat. And dog meat is a very important ingredient of some tantric preparations. But anyway, he goes to the street and he decides he's going to eat some dog meat, so they order this plate of deep fried dog meat. And he can't eat it because he keeps thinking of the lovely little dogs he'd seen earlier in the day. So what was in front of him, what was it? Was some brown stuff with a smell. Now he says, this is a dog, poor little pooch, how could they have done this? He brings a whole conceptual structure to a phenomena, and he turns brown roasted stuff into doggy. Woof woof. But it's not woof woof, it's brown sticky stuff. So he is demonstrating how to interrupt your engagement in the world on the basis of your construct. Now you may feel that's a very pure and ethical construct that he has. He's saying, because I like animals, I really wouldn't want to participate in this. But woof woof's already gone. And what is this in front of him? He doesn't taste it. He doesn't even see what it is. I mean, this is the other side of the famous story of Sangha Maitreya, who had many, I won't tell you the whole story, but he went through many, many difficulties in his meditation and kept trying, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't have any success. And he decided to give up his meditation, and he's walking home from the cave where he spent many, many years. Maybe you know this story. And he sees a dog, and the dog's limping and whimpering. So he goes up to it and he sees that it's got a wound. So he thinks, oh, how can I help the dog? And he looks into the wound and sees there are maggots there. So he decides, oh, I have to take these maggots out. And then he finds a stick. And he thinks, oh, I'll hurt the maggot. And he doesn't know what to do. And so he decides that he must somehow be very gentle and tender to the maggot. So he closes his eyes and he puts his tongue forward to let the maggot go on his tongue so that it won't be harmed. And at that point, he sees Buddha Maitreya. So there he was transcending a category. And if we live inside the box of our category, this is good, this is bad, all that we do is encounter ourselves. The whole world is simply a reflection of our own limitation. So it depends on the view. Clearly, if you have the view, I want to be a vegetarian, I have a very strong commitment to this, and I want to live a pure life, then maintaining that in the face of other people's discomfort may seem very virtuous to you. But from another point of view, it wouldn't be. And this, of course, is the central question. There is no truth anywhere. Everything is relative. All propositions are propositions. And so it is all method. The real nature, the rest we do, and it's all methods. Any method will never be the truth. It will reveal some things and it will also conceal some things. So that's one of the reasons for studying. The more views we understand, the more we realize that this complexity that we live within, that we are, can be read through many different vectors. And the reason we might take up a particular view is on the side of ourselves to illuminate our own nature, and on the side of others to be more compassionate. And different methods will help in different ways. And it depends on your view. So there is a recent letter gone out from this young Karmapa saying that he is completely opposed to eating meat. And he says, although there are stories of some yogis in the past eating meat, this is not for us. We have many, many yogis who have said you must never eat meat. It's completely forbidden to eat meat. In my monasteries they will no longer be serving meat. I am not going to eat meat. Then you will meet someone like Namki Norbu, who will say, when you eat meat you can integrate into the state of the cow from which the meat came, and through that you can help to liberate the cow. These are different views. Is one right, is one wrong?
If the Karmapa,
Pardon?
if the Karmapa chose to take a few steps and go outside of his monastery, he would be able to see all the people who are starving.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to India, I came back and I stopped all my fasts. Because when you see people who can't eat and are starving, then you realise you have no right to refuse anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a view, and that illuminates something for you. I think that's the whole thing, is that there is no truth that can be spoken. Everything is a method, and that's one of the radical things that shifts, that makes Buddhism different from the Semitic religions, all of which are dogmatic, all of which start with propositions, with creeds, with sets of beliefs. And we're saying these are all ways in which you can help to loosen yourself so that you can understand your own nature and be more available for others. But which method to use depends on your lineage, your luck, your capacity, and so on. But the best method is always, the highest method is always the method you can do. It doesn't matter what other people do. The best one is the one that you're going to do every day. The best one is the one that you remember. Because having many initiations and many high practices that you leave on your bookshelf and don't do is simply to betray yourself. What you actually can do, what rings true for your capacity, what you can live and breathe and take into your daily life, that is the aspect of Dharma that's singing for you. And if you really do that, after a while you may be able to hear another tune, and you'll sing that tune, and then you'll sing that tune. Not necessarily as a progression. Some people start with very high practices and then do lots of prostrations. Some people start cleaning butter lamps and then end up doing Mahamudra. If you start with yourself, trust yourself, look at your own condition and find out what you need to do. If a simple devotional practice, if lighting butter lamps and doing some prostrations and praying to the Buddhas with tears in your eyes, with the hair on the back of your neck standing up as you think of the children being raped and tortured in Darfur, if that opens your heart, that is your highest practice. So clearly we have to know ourselves, but we also have to know the Dharma. Any last questions before we do a final meditation?
Could I ask about the middle way? Whether once we are working with absorption, we wouldn't be looking to find a middle way. We're actually looking to find the emptiness of everything.
That is the middle way.
Is the middle, right. Could you say more? Could you just...
If something has no limits, it doesn't have a left and a right, or a top and a bottom. Therefore, everything is the middle. That's why you are the center of the world. God is the center of the world. I am the center of the world. Who is the real center? If it's infinite, there is no place that you can locate the center. Like here we've got a bowl. We can draw lines from the circumference and we can work out where is the middle. Yeah? Because the edge helps you find the middle. If you don't have any edge, where will you find the middle? You can find the middle of this room, but if you go up on the hill and you look at the sky, where will you find the middle of the sky? So because the mind is like the sky, no edges, no middle, everything is middle. So if everything is middle, everything's the middle way. Because there are no extremes. All extremes exist within the middle. By recognizing the openness of the ground, what had appeared as the limitation, as the absolute boundary of your existence, is now just stuff arising and passing. That's how you can be without limit. And then you start to believe in your own concepts again, you start to worry or get anxious, and your limits return. Then you relax and your limit goes. Then you start to realize, oh, my limits are something that come and go. Oh, today it's quite nice to have lots of limits. Now my limits are gone. I go into work, it's very appropriate to have certain limits. I go out and I can let go of these limits. Limits are passing phenomena. They are not definitions of the real nature of existence. So in that way we start to realize it's all theatre. Due to causes and conditions, in certain situations, we present ourselves in one way. Then we present ourselves in another way. And people say, but how can you do this and then do that? Aren't you being hypocritical? Why not? Why not be hypocritical? Hypocritical means if you say you're a dog, how come you're a cat? Because there is a category differentiation. Dogs are not cats because cats are not dogs. This is the rule of mutual exclusion that we looked at earlier. But that rule is false. So, Padmasambhava showed 8 different forms. In fact, he shows millions of forms all the time. We are each a form of Padmasambhava. But he shows 8 major forms, some very peaceful, some very wrathful. So who is the real Padmasambhava? That's right. So none of the forms, which are the expressions of the ground, define the ground. So if the real Padmasambhava is the ground, whatever you know about this form of Padmasambhava doesn't then make the other form of Padmasambhava wrong. Therefore, there is no hypocrisy. But that's only true if you recognize the ground. If you don't recognize the ground, there's a lot of hypocrisy. Because you're setting up a dogma and you believe in your dogma. Then you're betraying yourself by being one thing and then pretending to be another. The married person who takes off their wedding ring when they go into a bar late at night is being hypocritical. Because they are married, they have made a dogmatic assertion. Today I will marry you and I will stay with you. That is a statement of defining oneself. So whenever you define something and set it up as a proposition, if you stray from that proposition, then of course you have a contradiction, a conflict. But from the ground, all propositions are like sky flowers. They're like rainbows, like the reflection of the moon on water. But it's very important, this area, because you can see easily here how you can cheat yourself. It's very, very important in Buddhism not to practice sophistry, not to practice a self-serving philosophical justification. If you are relaxed and open, everything is possible. But if you are trapped in yourself, then you have to accept this is my condition at the moment and act accordingly. To pretend that you are more open than you are is to cheat yourself and to cheat others. So the real middle way is based in meditational recognition. Well, it's very easy to cheat people. Everybody's looking for salvation. Everybody's looking for happiness. Everybody's looking for something to believe. You can sell anything. How many people are going to be watching this new Big Brother or Big Sister? People are looking for something. Why would anybody imagine anything of real value will be generated in that environment? Yet millions of people will look at it, looking for gold, looking for entertainment, looking for something of value. So, particularly when we practice religion, because it has an extra edge to it that makes it particularly appealing to vulnerable people, we have to be very careful not to create nonsense stories, not to offer false hopes, but just to stay simply with the practice, observe yourself, know the difference between being open and clear and being closed and particularized and diminished. And if you find yourself mainly in a state of diminishment, don't pretend you're open. Do the practice suitable to that level. And if you don't know what the practice is, ask and you can learn. There are many different practices. Okay, so let's do a final practice of the 3 R's. And we'll sit for a while, and at the end we just open up all the merit or virtue that might have arisen from our study and practice together out to all beings. Gewan Dien Yode Da Ujen Lama Drujune Drowa Chicha Malupa Dei Sala Kepasho. So, this brings us to the end of our brief time together. Always very enjoyable to be here, to meet you. And of course, this event arises independent co-origination on the basis of many people's efforts, and it's very important to remember that. Gordon, of course, for his inspiration in the development of this center and all the effort he's put into that. And Chris for the recording, and many people's efforts in preparing the kitchen, cleaning, organizing. These things are very, very important. Somehow we can imagine that Dharma practice is something very rarefied and special, but where it becomes very real is when it is engaged with ordinary things like cleaning the dishes, being thoughtful about whether the urn is filled, just being present in the ordinary activity, integrating space and precision. Space and precision. And my own experience is that this place operates very smoothly, very nicely. It's probably all secrets I don't know about. So thank you very much for inviting me, and perhaps we meet again.